So the bottom line is how do you go in and then showcase a whole bunch of vehicles? So imagine being able to plug your house into your car, into your motorcycle, and it provides you with energy. It just sits there, and idling your vehicle is the law, because that's how you're cleaning the environment. And you provide a node for creating cryptocurrency, blockchain, have software and information and everything is distributed across the network. There's 3 copies. If one goes missing, it repopulates, and you have completely decentralized infrastructure.
As Americans seek economic protection, after the most controversial election in U.S. history, J.P. Morgan Chase is placing billions of dollars for silver to grow more than 100% in 2021. Year to date in 2020 alone, gold is up 30% and silver rising more than 50%. And now we're entering a new year facing economic realities of a global economic crisis caused by COVID and political reactions. Patriot Gold Group has the No Fee for Life IRA, where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold or physical silver. And you may be eligible for the No Fee for Life IRA. Give them a call at 1-800-356-4470, and the knowledge that Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold IRA dealer 5 years in a row from 2016 to present, and you work directly with an owner, avoiding absurd fees. To find more information, the link's in the description box below. And now on with the video. Adapt 2030 Mini Ice Age Conversations covers changes in our climate due to a new and intensifying grand solar minimum. In the media, overlooking, downplaying, or burying cold weather changes occurring on our planet. This is in order to keep the global warming agenda steaming full speed ahead. I do this podcast and radio program because we need to begin conversations on how to adapt our food growing strategies long before 2030 as agricultural zones shift, affecting global crop output. But very few mainstream media outlets are talking about the most important issue of our time: cold weather crop losses. Our sun is going through a 400-year cycle, which has effects on our weather patterns as our magnetosphere weakens and the jet streams go out of flow. It's not CO2, it's not you, it's the sun. Are you ready to thrive in the grand solar minimum? Then join me for Mini Ice Age Conversations. I'm your host, David DuByne, creator of the Adapt 2030 Mini Ice Age 2015 to 2035 video series. A friend of mine who lives down in Costa Rica says to me, you know what, we're going to have to retool the entire world economy. Now, it's not going to be by choice, but if we're going to have to retool it, we're going to have to do small projects like, replace the entire energy paradigm and spectrum right now with hydrogen so people can have a more inexpensive way to produce whatever they would do for either factories or homes. And also you're going to have to replace and retool the entire economic system based on cryptocurrency. And he said, well, it's a tiny pet project. Revamp all energy on the planet as well as the entire economic system. So we'll start there. And he says, my friend Tom, you might want to talk to him because they just had some hydrogen breakthroughs. I think everybody out there listening right now is going to have a mind-opening 30 minutes to an hour here that we're going to talk about in the way that you perceive reality, what's possible in this world that we're living in, and how things are going to shift as we move forward through 2021 to 2025. Tom Ross, president of Teznic.com. Tom, thanks for joining me. The floor is yours.
But right now, the wants and desires are over. Even the big guys have decided that are in oil and US dollar, that it's a cryptocurrency that's the future, and hydrogen. It has to be, because everybody breathes the same air. I don't care if you say it's organic and on the other side of the fence, the guy's spraying. People are getting intelligent enough. Everybody has to have an awakening at the end of the day and say, look, I just want clean air, clean food, clean water, and a good environment for me and my family to grow up and some friends and enjoy this life. And if you get in the way of that, you got to go. So what if you could take something that made the mess in the first place, like a diesel and gas engine and all these other things, turn them into something that's oxygen? That's why we're in Costa Rica doing this. It's literally an environment that's conducive, that already is a world example. Or you go to Bhutan where, they're the only country putting back more oxygen into the environment than anybody else, right? But if we're at a deficit, forget about the old math, new math. At the end of the day, anybody can understand. If we're at a deficit and we're just trying to reduce creating more of a deficit. This is obviously just dying slower. So we need somebody to be putting back. And if that people are putting back enough that the other people are reducing or still creating more of a deficit, can balance that or get us ahead of the game. That's where we really need to be. So this is an oxygen plus. So it's not a carbon credit. This is an oxygen plus cryptocurrency. That's what this is. So imagine having a mining machine that gives back to the environment as it mines with an open source chipset, an open source hardware and software that's geopolitically neutral. To make dirty and dangerous energy financially obsolete in a way that works with the world. And that's where we are today. And whatever Africa adopts, because they got the fastest growing cities in the world financially, they did the opposite of Brexit. They've embraced cryptocurrency. Africa's become virtually one big market. They have the most arable land in the world. Whatever Africa does, they have critical mass. Once that's done, whatever they do, you're going to financially go obsolete if you don't adopt it. Because we can afford to pollute and have our lives and complain about stuff and still continue on and wake up every morning and continue on with these habits that are not good.
Yeah, let me jump in there for a second on the African Sahel. And those of you out there who follow my work on the grand solar minimum and these 400-year cycles in low solar activity that affect global crop production, currently, there's an enormous amount of areas in the northern hemisphere that are experiencing reductions, as well as the southern hemisphere. Now, to offset these losses, there has to be a new area on the planet that needs to come into some sort of agricultural production. And you hit the nail on the head there when you said the most arable land. One of the drawbacks is a lack of available electricity, and the building and construction of the new Renaissance Dam in Ethiopia, which is the largest hydroelectric facility in Africa that just came online. And magically, there's been cyclone after cyclone after cyclone refilling that, which is a whole nother thing of how weather patterns might be steered into an area for a certain purpose. Because the amount of rainfall they had, we've been told that these areas in Africa are going into a mega drought and it'll never come out because of what we put into the atmosphere with carbon dioxide. Yet they've had the most massive floods, 500-year flood, 1,000-year flood, 3 most 100-year floods all in just the last 4 months. So for me, something's a little bit off there. But with the amount of electricity that facility is going to produce, along with the plans for 3 more hydroelectric dams in some of the driest areas on the planet, makes me wonder who in their right mind would put the largest hydroelectric facility in Africa in the area that was slated to have the largest drought to never, ever have rainfall again for hundreds of years. The key point is coming back to electrification. And not only the electrification that could be spread apart from, let's say, Mauritania over to the Sudan and Ethiopia, but to drill in and tap that Nubian Sandstone Aquifer, to be able to pull those underground water resources, as well as draw from what's now falling more steadily from the West African monsoon shifting. So now you have 2 water resources there, but it still comes back to 2 different things. How do you buy, sell, and trade within those economies that are super disconnected? I mean, somebody in Mauritania is definitely not going to accept currency coming from the Sudan. I don't even know if there's an exchange rate. It's going to be somewhere in an obscure market, and it'll probably cost you 25% to convert from those 2 currencies. So you're going to have a sort of a one global or one stable coin. I think it's USDC myself that's going to be used over in the Sahel. A way to pay for it. So if I buy goods in one country, I can still pay for it with a 1-to-1 equivalent monetary unit. And if I pay you as a laborer from whatever sets of countries you're coming in from the Sahel, you know that 1 is going to equal 1 in your country. Now you got to think behind, we're into cryptocurrency, so a dollar is not a dollar. It's 1 equivalent unit that represents 1 exchangeable unit of agreed upon monetary value. But then at the same time, this whole electrification of everything to get out into the rural countryside, to drive the motors, the pumps, the drying facilities, and then at the same time, the machinery to get out into the fields to plow it. There's a fair few bottlenecks in today's traditional society in the way we're looking to move forward. We got the grand solar minimum intensification driving us to new areas to start production of agriculture, which are traditionally not growing areas, unless you mechanize it to the point that's almost beyond what we could do today. in the way we operate today. And this is the whole shift, what you're talking about. You need to break out of what we're considered, oh, you can only use gasoline powered motors. You can only use a dollar or some sort of fiat currency. And each nation has their own different one. Once you can blow through that and you start to see that, hey, maybe this hydrogen is a new way that we could do many different facets of farming, all under the same base, shall we say, technology. Because driving a pump or driving a tractor, it works for both electricity or fuels for and enhancements for farming equipment. And then at the same time, running on the blockchain and the different nodes to be able to have a stable coin for that entire region. And then you see how all these things are dovetailing together. And it is the future. We need to get down there to start growing more food. And then take a look geopolitically. I call it agri-politics, like agricultural politics or agribusiness politics, agri-politics. Look who is so heavily invested in that region right now. China. But then if you look at the EU neighborhood defense policy, they're also involved in Northern Africa, which used to be the old Roman grain growing areas. But then if we step a little bit further back in history, we take a look at the Kingdom of Ghana, clear over in Mauritania, and they had trade routes through. And they show it on the maps even where lakes were, so I don't know how much of our history about the true hydrology of Central and, say, Northern Africa is, because a lot of these maps from the 15 and 1600s are showing vast river systems, vast estuaries, and vast lakes. And the Kingdom of Ghana all the way over to places in the Sudan, the Nubian kingdoms, etc., stretching back 4,000 years, and we start to see the great mega lakes that are there. So there had to have been enough water for these great kingdoms to arise out of there as early as 400 years ago. So we know the water resources are there. The trade has been ongoing except for these last few hundred years on that whole Northern African continental scale. But they had to grow an enormous amount of food to bring up such vast societies at the time. I mean, the Kingdom of Ghana was the largest empire to ever rule in Africa. Only 400 years ago, 600 years ago, it started to decline because the climate system changed into more arid regions, and then there was contact with, you consider Westerners, if you will, and then just the conflicts that arose from that point forward. But we know proof of concept. Rice was domesticated there. Sorghum was domesticated in Western Africa. And you just see all these pieces starting to line up and mesh in. Now we just need these mechanisms, technology, and you kind of lined everything up there. And that's why I'm going on this little bit of longer rant, because, Tom, you have all these things that are going to fit perfectly into get this transition to the new ag zone, bringing up, being it productive and actually putting out enough food that it would make a difference on a global scale.
Well, what's interesting about this is there's some things here that are huge breakthroughs, because it's virtually a closed loop system for us. Because what happens is we take the exhaust, and what's coming out of the exhaust is water. So what is your fuel? Water. There will be some losses, but we actually have a pigtail on the tailpipe, so it has a different temperature to the atmosphere. So just like on a still for making alcohol, it pulls water, moisture out of its condenser, and that creates the water. So even if you have zero water source, there's moisture in the air. So you have hydrogen. You have it right there. So you don't even need a water source, and it doesn't need a whole bunch of water to run this thing, because you can pull it out of the air and it keeps recycling through the system. Because out of the exhaust runs right back into the system again. So this whole thing where you need tons of water to make hydrogen is actually a fallacy. We've been running cars on hydrogen, fully on hydrogen, since the 1980s. Fully. Regular cars with regular motors. And you put a little thing on the tailpipe, it makes water, it pushes it back in. All the safeties to make sure if it rolls over, this, that, whatever. But now we're making it on demand in the cylinder. So that means there's nothing to blow up. There's nothing to happen. What you said is really interesting, is that once people get to see this, they go, wow, okay, now I get it. You can literally clean the planet up by accelerating the existing behavior. The more people travel, the more people consume energy, the cleaner the environment gets, because it's just like a giant vacuum cleaner. That's what this is. An example would be in Costa Rica. The universe has an incredible sense of humor. An incredible sense of humor. And it's, eternal waters. Chirripo Mountain is 13,000 feet tall right next to it. That is actually a huge, huge pyramid with the two largest bodies of water on the planet on either side, moving up and down with the highest iron content, most biodiverse, protected area. If you go into that and take a look at it, there's stone spheres down there. There's always stone spheres and a mathematical equation that points toward the pyramids everywhere, that there are these stone spheres. And there's more stone spheres in Costa Rica than anywhere else on the planet. It's not by happenstance that it's the lowest violent crime rate, most biodiverse, blue zone where people live longer. The best things on the planet is in this area. It's called Good Air, Costa Rica, a place of 40, 50,000 people, a dull city. And here's what's happening. The universe did this. It's like they were going to put up a huge dam to be able to create electricity that may or may not have necessarily benefited, the citizens in Costa Rica, but it definitely flooded the lands of the indigenous. That was stopped, but you can't leave, like they did in Egypt. They got rid of a dictator in 30 days. One of the guys the marketing guy for Google got in a lot of trouble because in 30 days, they got rid of a dictator of 30 years with kids and keyboards. Look that up on 60 Minutes. But you can't leave a hole. You got to make it move forward after that. So they've stopped this huge dam project in Costa Rica, and all the indigenous, they were going to flood their lands. There's like 19,000 direct descendants of the Incas, the Mayans, the Aztecs, Egyptians that are in this area. Really, really fascinating. So the bottom line is how do you go in and then showcase this, a whole bunch of vehicles? So imagine being able to plug your house into your car, into your motorcycle, and it provides you with the energy you need. It just sits there, and idling your vehicle is the law, because that's how you're cleaning the environment. And you provide a node for creating cryptocurrency, blockchain, have software and information and everything is distributed across the network. There's 3 copies. If one goes missing, it repopulates. And you have completely decentralized infrastructure. And at a frequency, if you look at the pyramids and these different things, and you literally create infrastructure that resonates at a frequency that is conducive to cellular integrity and growth and to cleaning the water in your body. Because all illness is simply the improper replication of the DNA molecule. Now, what is it that gets in the way of that?
And how prepared are you for the transition into the grand solar minimum? Are you prepared for emergencies? Our friends at My Patriot Supply do have long-term, storable, and emergency food supplies. The 2-week grab-and-go food crate or the 4-week emergency food supply. They also have a large range of water filtration and items you can use yourself to get ready, such as Mylar bags, oxygen packs, things you can use to DIY your own long-term storable foods, and a host of different survival items that you might not have thought about during your preparations. Use the Adapt 2030 link in the description box below. And while you're there, take a look at the selection of heirloom seeds, because you're going to have to grow some of your own food moving forward into the new Eddy Grand Solar Minimum. Take back your peace of mind by knowing that you're prepared when others might not be.
The radiation, the chemicals, the heavy metals, all of this stuff. So what if you could put out a frequency like they do at the Bosnian Pyramids that actually super cleans your water? Why do they call it wellness? Water, deep water, wellness. It's all in the words. It's linguistics. It's there.
No, I'll stop you there because I know, sorry, we just talked about the Bosnian Pyramids. Okay, if you say Egyptian pyramids, nobody blinks an eye. You say Bosnian Pyramid, there's been a lot of suppression of that information in my own personal opinion. I traveled over to Croatia, and we had planned to go up to the Bosnian Pyramids, and because of the COVID, wasn't able to make it this trip. But the resonance frequency, and Nikola Tesla proved this incredibly well. And you can see, if you look in different spectrums, you can actually see the vortices being spun off. And why do you think people have used pyramids for so long? And you can store food under it. And instead of using a basket to keep your food, if you use it under a pyramidal structure, they find things that don't decompose or decay as quickly. And it's a proven science that there's a resonance field around that particular shape. And why do you think it's been so revered and used for antiquity? And even those of you who are, thinking about top-down pyramidal structures, at the top you have the elite, quote unquote, and then we come down, and they call it the pyramid of hierarchy, the pyramid of governmental control, whatever. It's still a pyramid. Why is that so central into that? This all-seeing eye. Look on the U.S. dollar bill. It's a pyramid. It's not about the control. It's about the vibrational frequency coming out of that, which could lead to the control. If you know how to manipulate the frequency and keep people less healthy all the time, their minds won't function as well all the time, and they can be more easily manipulated on a frequency, and then keep your cells not so hydrated, because Think about, was that Yamoto, the Japanese scientist who took the different bottles and then put a piece of tape on it and prayed into the water, and the water actually changed structure by the thought frequency going into it. Now bring that out into what we're talking about today, all these contaminants around us or just things in our natural environment. Have you ever thought about the water when it's coming out of your pipes, when it gets to your glass, what the molecular structure is inside of that, how the frequency is in that water? And then you consume that and take it into your body. So these are real things to think about. And, and that's the reason I brought it up, because Bosnian Pyramids, a lot of people are like, oh, it hasn't been proven. But, there's a lot of hidden archaeology, and the way that these institutions that are in control, or that the gatekeepers of information from the institutions to the funds, the endowments, and then, things that you see, museums, they're all in control of it, and you're only drip fed. So this whole hidden history, and then, the hidden tech and all these archaeological finds, the gatekeepers are controlling if you perceive it's real or not. How would that bend historical timelines and precedent if the Bosnian Pyramid was truly constructed earlier than the Egyptian pyramids? Or even if it was later than, it doesn't matter. It's still constructed, and it blows everything out of the water that you ever knew about the human history timeline. Do you think they're really going to let that go?
Yeah, the best thing to do is to reach out, because there's like 3,000 to 4,000 people that go through the Bosnian Pyramids every summer, and they take 2 to 3 day courses, and they go in, and there's huge experts from all over the world, from all different types of things, looking at scalar waves and the crystals and stuff. So it's real. There's thousands of people that go through those pyramids and have these experiences. It's just incredible. The ions, the frequencies that are in there. It's like, I know it sounds absolutely fantastical and completely improbable, but there are thousands of people that have had the experience and have gone through that you can reach out to, and you can go yourself. So it's only up to you. What do you wish to believe? If you go and take a look, I like to take everything else off the table. Whatever's left has to be the truth. The Bosnian Pyramids, where was Nikola Tesla born? He was born right there. They have found a Tesla coil, carbon dated to be 40,000 years old. Do you think maybe he might have had some ideas? Water running in parallel creates a current. Current is, they describe water movement, electricity, and in the moment, current affairs. So it's right there in the language. It's right there. You can't say that all these things I'm saying are coincidence. That's far too many things to be a coincidence. So the Bosnian Pyramids, Nikola Tesla got all of his ideas from the pyramids. You said, on the US dollar bill, the top is floating, the pineal gland, and then there's like this electricity coming out. What the heck is that? It's right there. So in Costa Rica, we see Buenos Aires, Costa Rica as being the opposite of the Dakota pipeline. So we come in there and show with the Disneyland and Epcot Center of hemp and hydrogen. The hempocracy is over. We're using hempoline and existing vehicles and retrofitting them and doing all these magical things. And it's in a low taxation, low regulatory area. So for people that are out there, they're, holding cryptocurrency or in this industry, your biggest issue is, how do you exit? How do you exit cleanly? And a lot of people have tried, with paying their dues and their taxes and stuff. And then they find out they become a bit of a sacrificial goat. They go a little too far with them. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. I tried to do and give back, and what's going on here? So there's more of a bigger game. What if longitude, latitude, IP, and MAC address, you could prove that this actually transacted on a native reserve? And what if you Googled right now and found out that native reserves all over the world are taking their money that they're doing for the low taxation, low regulatory with this clean energy and bringing them to us, and they're taking enough money to buy back their land and to repatriate it and turn it into reserves? That's happening as we speak all over the planet. As we speak. These are not things I'm talking about that are going to happen. They're happening underneath you right now. You can go research it. This is life. This is reality. This is what we're living. This is where we are. There's a new paradigm replacing the old one. There's not a change in the paradigm. Nobody that made horses, horses and carriages and buggies and buggy whips was successful at making cars. But yet 13 years after one car in a picture in New York, downtown New York City, is one car, all horses. 13 years later, it's all cars and only one horse and buggy. So that's how long it took over 100 years ago to have this transition. Today, it happens so fast. And, the clock is ticking. This is where you're supposed to apply the brakes so you don't hit the wall.
When it reaches this stage, this is where it seems through historical precedent, things start to be disappeared or slowed down or crushed by governments in the same, if you want to go back to the pyramid at the top, that they never want to allow this type of technology and systems out to the greater public. But, We are in this time of a transitional phase. The old world, as you see, so clearly now, we're never going back to it. It's a complete change, and it will occur much faster because we're so much more interconnected. Moving forward to the personal experience, knowing that cryptocurrency, maybe you only have to have a quarter of your eye open in just one side of your head to notice that everything's going to be moving to the blockchain and cryptocurrency. It's going to be a complete reinvention of the economy globally. Why do you think they're talking about phasing out cash? Coins are being phased out. They keep talking about going to a cashless society. I don't think that's on just a random happenstance. That's a plan. As well as the amount of electricity, or I should say energy, you will be able to consume, and as well as the calorific intake, and if you look right into the same systems changes, unless you're growing your own food, you're going to be on a specific how many calories per day you're allowed to consume. And, in the blockchain, it's quite easy to bring that down into different decimals. You can go anywhere from 8 decimals deep on that. So easily they can carve out 1 calorie. So you can go 1,321 calories for the day. And I'm just curious how you think this is going to continue to move forward. And now it's into the phase of rolling out in Africa, but at what point do elite control establish fossil fuel industries and other, you're disrupting an enormous amount of industry across the planet by rolling this out. So how do you think in earnest you're going to be able to push over there through history, everything up to this point? Right when you reach this point, you're at that pivotal caveat of taking like an 1/8 of an inch step to the right and you're into global mass adoption. And it seems when it gets right here, it gets squashed. I'm just curious how you think it's going to move from this point without that interference that normally occurs. But I know we're in a new phase as well. So new industries, systems, currencies, way we interact has to come out to replace the old system. If it's going to go to zero, we have to have a new one. So just curious on your thought on that.
What you can do is you can add elegant organization to an existing community. And we're not outnumbered, we're out-organized. And today we have the tools to be organized. There is no excuse. So all we're doing is adding elegant organization to an existing community, which is the energy industry transitioning to hydrogen. Cryptocurrency and energy is just coming up over the hill. That's what's about to happen. Everything happens in a downturn. All the biggest brands and biggest corporations in the world were filed in the 30s. So you can go look at history and verify all this stuff. It's all real. So the bottom line is the incubator in Costa Rica, Carov, you can go there. And this is where everything meets in Costa Rica. So CAROV.com. There's an incubator there for alternative education, alternative energy, AI. It's a very interesting, very eclectic, very diverse for a small incubator, driven by some founders that were investment bankers. You go to Teznic.com, and at Teznic.com, the information is there. It's by request by certain people at this point until we completely open source it, because we're looking for certain organizations and individuals to be able to come to us, and we share this information with them to verify it, and then we bring it out to everybody all at once. So that's only because we're only gating it because of our own internal resources, because this only happened recently, last 3 to 4 months, this breakthrough. So we just have to scale up to be able to do that. So we want certain people that can help us to scale, to say, hey, look, I've done open source projects before. I've done foundations before. I am in this sector. I know what you're talking about. I have some type of value to help you to scale this. And that's initially what our ask is the people to say, hey, I understand what you're talking about. I'd like to help you to disseminate this information as fast as possible. So that's really our ask.
This video is brought to you by our friends at TrueLeafMarket.com. Heirloom and organic seeds for any grow zone on our planet.